From Achieve Studios, this is a Basic Podcast. Hello, gang, and welcome to a Basic Podcast. My name is Kingsley Martin. I'm writing solo this week and for this episode, and I really want to apologize to you because it was absolutely our intent when starting this podcast to provide you information about 10 organizations up front, and starting with the American Council of the Blind and their upcoming convention, which is currently in progress from July 3rd through the end of this week, July 10th, and then information about the National Federation for the Blind, which is having its annual conference beginning July 14th and running through the 18th. The challenge is that the ACB conference is in full blast right now. It is a breakout session packed with all kinds of material conference, and so as a result of it, it is really difficult to be able to focus on spending time getting information about the National Federation for the Blind. So I apologize for that because it's absolutely not our intent to ignore what NFB is doing, because what they do is just as valuable as ACB. My hope is to get some information to you by Thursday regarding the conference, what kind of content you can expect, and then we will come back and look at NFB a little bit more than we can on Thursday. I can cover a little bit of information about NFB on Thursday because I want you to have that content, but I want to make sure you're aware of the convention. For whoever's listening to this now or in the future, I want you to be aware of the kind of content they're offering and their agenda. One of the things I can tell you that is different about NFB versus ACB. So let's define it. ACB is the American Council of the Blind, and NFB is the National Federation of the Blind. The difference between the two is, in their conferences specifically, is ACB does a lot more breakout sessions. So it's not everybody sitting in the same auditorium for, 8 to 10 hours a day and sort of going over the same material. Whereas NFB is a little more focused in that way, where they say, okay, everybody's going to be discussing the same things, and this is going to be our agenda. Day one, we're going to talk about this. Day two, we're going to talk about this. ACB kind of goes across the board with a variety of conversations. So while a session might be going on talking about transportation related to paratransit or, fixed route transportation and mobility in rural areas, they also might have a workshop going on the most accessible dating apps that people can use, or focused on blind entrepreneurs. So they could have all those different breakout sessions going on at the same time, where NFB says, okay, today we're going to focus on legislation that is directly affecting the accessibility for people who are blind or sight impaired. And everybody's focused on that topic. There's no right way about each path of providing the information. It's just a different approach. I want to cover them both as fairly as possible, and I think they're both very valuable to people to know about. So on Thursday, I'll give you more information about NFB and their conference and what you can expect from their conference. You can still attend the NFB conference, but their registration is closed. You can still attend their conferences through their Zoom links or their dial-in sessions. You don't have the ability to get the same kind of access to vote in their officers, appointment. And I don't think you have the same accessibility to win prizes and such, but that really shouldn't be the reason you go to any of these conferences anyway. It should be for the content, not for what you can get out of it from a prize, since it's not, The Price is Right. It's a conference, and those are just kind of little tokens of sorts, but the thing you should be looking for the most is the value from the content. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, that's really what you're interested in the most. And, it's nice to have some swag, but it's better to build up your knowledge and your skill set. I will tell you about NFB, a couple of things that I find very interesting about NFB. I will say that NFB has two interesting programs that ACB, to my knowledge so far, does not have. The two that they have are you could get a free white cane every 6 months and a free slate and stylus. And I don't know if that is every 6 months or every year, but I know at least once a year you can have a slate and stylus or a white cane, and that's every 6 months. So the benefit of the white cane that they offer you from NFB, it's very unique because NFB has a perspective from what I have sort of been able to determine so far, that they want you not to be ashamed of the fact or concerned about the fact that you happen to be blind or sight impaired. And so as a result of it, they have stiff canes, like one long cane that you use. In other words, it's not collapsible. It is designed to match your height to the best of the measurement categories that they use. And when you go and get on a bus or you go to a restaurant, you lay it down next to you on the floor at your feet in the most logical way to not obstruct traffic around you, but it's not something that you collapse. And they want it to be so that people are aware that you have a sight impairment and that they consider that. Now, some people may not like that. They may go, I don't want to draw attention to that aspect of, my life any more than necessary. I want people to see me as an individual and not focus on my eyes. NFB's perspective on this seems to be that you should not be afraid of that aspect of who you are and embrace it, and say, if someone comes over to you, make sure that they know that you're going to need some kind of an accommodation, or understanding that it's not going to be as simple as, here's a piece of paper, read it, and I'll come back and talk to you and get your order in 3 or 4 minutes. The other thing they offer is the Braille Slate and Stylus program, which means that every 6 months or a year, conceivably, I don't have this defined yet to me, that they offer the ability for you to get your own slate and stylus. Now, this is something I discussed on the debut episode, where I said that we can teach you to do Braille with DIY stuff, where you can go and get a muffin pan, or you could get a six egg crate, and we could teach you Braille textually without having to put you in front of a Braille writer. Okay, and you could learn the textual pattern of the Braille cell and how the letters are defined. And then we could move you into typing those letters and seeing what it feels like on paper. So that since NFB provides this free slate and stylus program, that means that you do not have to invest financially in getting a slate and stylus, which could cost you, depending on, what design you're going for, it could cost you, in the range of about $20 or something. It's not a super huge investment, but if you are on a very tight budget, you could go to NFB and participate in this program and get that free slate and stylus. I do not know if you need to be a member or not, but NFB does offer a free news service where you can hear your newspapers read. They offer a number of things. So it may be worth investing in being a member so that you can participate in that free cane program free slate and stylus program every 6 months to a year. But it will save you when it comes to wanting to learn Braille. You can go get that slate and stylus, and you can work with it while you're working with your textual Braille learning that we will get into working with you on. So I want you to consider that about NFB. NFB seems to have a very special focus on the family structure. So when I was looking at their website the other day, one of the things I noticed was that their categories are people who are blind, people who are losing their sight, parents who are blind, parents who have blind children, students, employers, that sort of thing. So it's focusing on the structure of the family and helping the family to work with blindness and their employers. It's not necessarily talking about the entire community, but about the kind of the infrastructure of the family and the work environment to make sure that that is working as effectively as possible for you. Now, this does not mean that they are not trying to work with people in the community to create more accessibility and more community understanding of what it means to have sight complications. It just means that they have a special attention, it seems like, on focusing on the family structure and stability and the stability of your work environment and being able to take care of those two significant priorities in your life. So I hope it gives you a little bit about NFB. They are not worse or better than ACB. They just offer their perspective and their approach in a different way. And what works for some with ACB may not work with those who like NFB, and vice versa. Or they may like both aspects of the approach and say, I like this part of ACB and this part of NFB, and I'm just going to coexist within that. And really, there's no reason to draw the lines. Say, okay, well, you know what I really like about this group is this, and what I like about this group is this, and then enjoy both aspects of it and take advantage of the information and the resources that they offer you. We'll be back here on Thursday talking more about the NFB conference and what's going on there. Next week, we will have some episodes reviewing the American Council of the Blind's annual convention. We'll start reviewing what they've done and what we've learned, both Becky and I. But do not forget that the National Federation of the Blind, their annual conference, which will also be virtual this year, will be held from July 14th through the 18th. For more information, do go to nfb.org. So that's N as in Nancy, F as in Frank, B as in boy, period, O-R-G. So nfb.org. Look down through the links. The convention information is not sort of readily available at the top of the page. So scroll down to the bottom. You'll see a bunch of links, and one of them is the National Convention. Go look into it. Explore. There's a lot of content there, and they have a lot of photos on their site, not only their convention, but also of families and students and things like that. And that gives you that feel for what I was talking about, how about the family structure and work are very important elements to their mission in the organization. And it's got audio described in the tag. So it'll say photo of a woman standing at the national convention, photo of a family standing at a national convention, whatever it may be. So there's tags to try and help you to not just know you're dealing with an image, but what the image is of. I hope those of you who are attending the American Council of the Blind's national convention, that you are enjoying it. There's a lot of great material out there. a little overwhelming because there is so much information and it's just hard to absorb it all. But they do catalog a lot of it, a lot of this material they catalog, and you can find it online in podcasts, and you can find it on ACB Radio. There are a number of ACB Radio links. Go to acbradio.org and you can listen to some of this content, and I encourage you to do it. I really admire the effort that Dan Brown, I think that's his name. I'm still new to ACB information. Don't quote me on his name. The chairman of ACB, I like a lot of things he does. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but that's okay. I don't have to. It's kind of that old thing. Look at the good things. Don't look at the things you don't agree with, because that's not what you're there for. I'm not there to nitpick. I'm looking at the good things that are going to benefit me and, more importantly, benefit this audience. You guys are the reason that I do this, because I have lived as a sight-impaired person for a long time. My sight has decreased more and more as I have gotten a little more finely aged like wine. And I want to make sure that I can provide the best content to you. My point in that all is that ACB has some great resources, and I think they've handled their virtual conference this year very well under the circumstances. There's things they have learned. I have absolute certainty that they have learned in the process, and that when they choose to put on any aspect of their virtual convention next year, it will be 100 times better. Not because it was bad this year, but because they started out as good as they have, and all they can do is get better. All they can do is get better. Don't ever look at it as though, well, this just didn't work. Of course certain things aren't going to work. The first year, nothing goes right. This is the same thing for us as sight impaired and blind people when we're trying to do things. Don't let the first time you walk with a cane and you bump your head on something or you trip on something deter you from doing it again. Don't let anything stop you from moving forward. When you get scared or something, it shouldn't be the reason you stop. It should be the reason you push forward. I'll share a little story with you that I wasn't going to get into, but I feel like maybe I should share it to you. So about a week ago, on June 29th of the year, last Monday, I was preparing to go to the grocery store, and I was ordering an Uber from my home, and the first driver got to be about 2 minutes away from my home, and it just seemed like they stalled for 10 minutes, and it constantly just said 2 minutes away, 2 minutes away, 2 minutes away, and they never came. I eventually said, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to get to the market. I've got to go meet my brother, who was going to be there as well. So I canceled that ride and ordered a second ride. This gentleman named David in a Lexus E-Class, black Lexus E-Class, was listed as my driver. I waited him to come. It said he was 1 minute away a couple of times, but 5 minutes passed. Finally, he did arrive. But when he pulled up, I was standing right there on the curb in a little tiny concrete area, and he pulled up, but pulled slightly past me and not quite flush against the curb, kind of where there was a little bit of a gap, like a, 15, 18-inch gap. So I stepped off the curb towards his car, and I'm standing there sort of almost against his car because of the way the separation between his car and the curb was. And I'm at the back door, preparing to open it, and he says, "Do you have a mask?" Well, I wasn't wearing a mask because I just have a different perspective on the masks. So I don't wear them when I'm just walking around in public every day. Unless I have to go into a store, I will respect the fact that I'm going to, respect either their edict on it or that they're trying to protect themselves from prosecution or fines. So I'll wear the mask for whatever reason in there because, if I get into someone's private business, I need to honor and respect that. So I said, yes, sure. So I began to pull my mask out of my pocket and put it on. And I guess you should understand about me is that I have no sight in my right eye, and I have 20/1600 sight in my left eye. While I get around fairly well, I do have very limited sight. I'm incredibly nearsighted, and if I get distracted from looking at something, I don't know what's going on. So I'm standing there basically against the car with the trunk area and the back tire to my left and the door to the vehicle basically in the middle of my right thigh and to my right. So I begin to put the mask on, and I just pulled it out of my pocket and started putting it on, and this guy drives off. And when he drives off, he rolls over my left foot. And I don't know at this point what's going on. I am just literally stunned from it to the point it's like, wait, what just happened here? I mean, if you look at me, you can tell that there is something different about my left eye. It's because of glaucoma and nystagmus and cataracts. It has a very foggy look. My right eye has a prosthetic in it, and so, or a forward prosthetic, meaning a partial. And so that looks relatively normal, but my left eye does not. So he drives off and rolls over my foot, and I'm just sitting there stunned, and I try to text him and tell him what's going on, and tell him, you just ran over. Well, my first words were, you just drove off and left a sight-impaired person. That was very prejudiced. Why did you do that? That was very discriminatory. And before I can send the message saying, and you ran over my foot in the process, which I wasn't feeling the pain from it at this point, because it was just this adrenaline rush. I knew that he rolled over my foot because I felt it, but I did not see it. The only reason I knew it was happening is in the process of it occurring. So he rolls over my foot, and that's when I start looking up, and I'm seeing him drive down the street. I get up on the curb and start texting him saying, hey, what is going on here? You just did this, and trying to text him and tell him, this was wrong, and you did this to me in the process. And he disconnects the trip and cancels the trip. So what happened was I could not find a way to get a hold of Uber. It was recommended to me that I go to the app after looking on Google and talking to my brother and him trying to look through the app itself. I tried to do it with my voiceover. He looked through it on his phone, but it was no way to call them. So I go to Google and I try to look up how to contact Uber. But what they tell me is you need to go in the app and do these two things to call them, but those two things do not exist within the app. So there is no way to call them. So either that's an Android-based approach or they have changed it relatively recently. Either way, it was recommended to me, go post something on their Facebook page, which is exactly what I did. I went and posted a notice on their Facebook page, and they were like that in reaching out to me and saying, please tell us what happened. Let us know what's going on. And so I tell them, hey, this is what's going on with your driver. And they send me a message back saying, well, we're very concerned about this. We're going to look into it. Now, on advisement, I call the police. And at this point, my foot is starting to feel some soreness from what has happened. The adrenaline has worn off, and I'm starting to go, this doesn't feel good. It's a little stiff. I can still, move my, foot, my toes, the whole thing like that. but it's still a little painful. Where I feel it the most is on the top of my foot, not even on my toes necessarily, but on the top of my foot, sort of close to the calf. And forgive me, I don't know medical terminology, but I'm feeling on the top of my foot. And so I don't know, is it, fractured or broken or whatever else. But we're in a situation now where I live alone. I have 2 dogs. I don't want to go to a hospital to have this checked, especially during the midst of this whole, COVID-19 thing going on, where every time you go there, you get diagnosed with it, whether you've got it or not. I just don't want to get involved in that game right now that people are playing. So I opted not to go, not because my foot didn't hurt, but because of the things I just mentioned. And I didn't feel like it was something where it was like when I touched it, it was sensitive. It felt more like it hurt, like it was, within my foot, but not necessarily like there was if I touched it, it was going to sting or something like that. And I told them that it felt like it was harder to move my toes, for example, but I could still do it. So they said, it could be swollen. The first responders from the Houston Fire Department gave me a couple of ice packs to use, which I used, and then continued to ice it with, Ziploc and, the normal ice and such. But I didn't file charges of vehicular assault at that time, even though I should have and I could have, and I'm probably going to, because not only did Uber virtually never reach out to me again, they seem to end it at, we really care a lot about this, but when I look on their app, this guy is still a driver with Uber. They haven't offered me any justification as to why he drove off. Was he sick? Was there something going on? They never offered me any information. Did this guy feel like he was about to have a heart attack? I mean, what was going on with the guy? Was he not paying attention and he rolled over me? Because they never came back and said, hey, listen, we were sorry what happened, but you understand this guy was having a health crisis of his own. Nothing. They told me nothing. They did nothing. They said nothing from them. And the guy is still a driver, and it's as though for them, it's just, whatever. And I'm tired of companies like this not understanding that they have a responsibility to people. I mean, they choose their political perspectives to stand on, but when it comes to things that may affect people with physical challenges of some kind, it's as though they just go, yeah, there's no meat in that for us. There's no media meat in that. That won't get us the same kind of coverage that, standing with rioters and protesters will get us. And it's pathetic. We deserve better as a community and to be respected just as much as anyone. And I don't know if this guy couldn't stand the fact that he didn't know how to deal with a sight impaired person, or if this just guy was having a problem. I have no idea, because Uber didn't reach back out to say, here, listen, I want you to understand what happened, and we're so sorry. And, anything, not saying, well, we're so concerned about you. They did write back and say, we're sorry about what happened to your left foot, but that was the extent of it. They never reached back in to say, hey, how are you doing? Are you doing any better? I mean, did you get a chance to see a doctor? Is there anything we can do? I had to call them after I found an emergency phone number later that night. On the night of the 29th, after I had encountered the police and had a incident report filed, after I had spoken with the first responders from the fire department and gotten the ice packs, and I'm sitting there with the ice pack on, calling them to give them the incident report number from the police department. And they go, oh, well, that should not have happened. But at the same time, they're just showing very little concern about it. And this is not the kind of thing these people should be getting away with. You should not pick your things to be worried about based on what is going to get you better media coverage. And I'm at the point now where I want people to know that an Uber driver ran over me and Uber did not care that it happened. Uber has shown zero concern for this occurring. This has to be addressed with Uber, but my overall goal by telling you that story is telling you that when there are problems, you cannot just hide from them and go, okay, well, I'm not even going to try this again. You have to get back out there. You have to go do things. You have to stand up for yourself, and you have to believe that you are just as valuable and worthy of moving about in the world and having a great life and a great experience as anyone else. I won't let this stop me from me getting out and moving around. Well, it might be, it's been hard over the last week to walk a little bit. I won't lie about that. It seems like the bruising has subsided. The pain from it has subsided, but I've had a little bit of tiny bit of numbness, and I don't know what the long-term effects may be from this, but I can't let it stop me from getting out. And the same thing applies to you. If you're blind and you've been hit by a car, if you're scared of getting hit by a car, you can't let fear control you. You've got to get out there and put yourself out there. It is scary, but just like anything, catching a bus, going into a relationship, meeting new friends, going shopping, if you're sight impaired or blind, it's a totally different experience from the sighted world. But you deserve just as much value and independence in that process as you can have. And as technology evolves, you get more and more of that accessibility and that accommodation and that freedom. And it's our responsibility to continue to push for that. So consider those things. I've said, please do go look at nfb.org for more information on their national convention. If you have some time this week, do go and check out the acbradio.org and listen in on a number of their channels and some of the different breakout sessions that they are doing for their national convention. You can also go to acbconvention.org. So go check that out, and we will look forward to being back here again with you on Thursday. Until then, remember, there are no I's in this team. Take care, everybody.
A Basic Podcast is an Achieve Studios production. Special thanks to all of you for listening and your participation. If you're enjoying the podcast, you can show your support in a number of ways. First, you can subscribe to the podcast on the platform you are listening to the program, so you never miss a new episode. Then take a minute to like and share our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/basicpod. And while you're on the Facebook page, join the Listeners Club, where you can interact with us and other listeners about the various topics we discuss on the show. If you have an idea for the podcast or some constructive feedback, please give us a call at area code 505-585-0500. You can also reach us by email at basicpod@gmail.com. Who knows? We just may feature your comment or question on an upcoming episode of Phone In Fridays. Stay engaged and stay in touch. That's a wrap for today. Until next time,
I'm Kingsley Martin.
And I'm Becky Nollendorf, and this is A Basic Podcast.